The fearless John Wick is in the thick of a pursuit. His objective? To retrieve his Ford Mustang from Abram Tarasov. John pursues a motorcycle rider until he's managed to flip the bike and take an invite card that opens the doors for Abram's location. Tarasov, you see, is the sibling of the late Viggo Tarasov. Hearing of John's approach, Abram wastes no time in packing up his operation. There's this one henchman, a bit too sure of himself, who trivializes John and boasts that he could take him on all by himself. He queries Abram, wondering if they're seriously putting everything on the line for a mere car. But Abram reminds him, this isn't just any car, it's John Wick's car. This is the man who decimated his nephew, his brother, and many of his henchmen, all because of his car and a puppy. Abram emphasizes that John Wick is a man of focus, dedication, and sheer determination. He reminds them of the time John eradicated 3 men with nothing but a pencil. In the meantime, John has managed to uncover the location of his beloved Ford Mustang and makes a beeline for Abram's hideout. But on the way, he is pursued by Tarasov's men. Unfortunately, his car is hit by his attacker, and one more assailant joins the fray and damages his Mustang. He still manages to turn the vehicle on and make an escape, but one lonely bike rider chases him and shoots at him. John has to sacrifice one of his doors to stop the rider in his tracks. He continues back to his objective, and he gets a bit jealous of people ramming his car, so he begins playing the same game. But out of nowhere, he is knocked out of his vehicle and is forced to get into hand-to-hand combat. But as is expected, he takes care of his attackers without much difficulty. He finally makes his way to Abram's room, and the man is scared for his life. Interestingly, John spares Abram's life on the condition that he vows to never cross paths with him again. Accepting this truce, John retreats and returns to his abode, his mission accomplished. Soon after, John finds himself returning all mementos of his past life as a hitman to their resting place in the ground. His goal, to embrace the simple, ordinary existence of a man mourning the loss of his wife. A few days later, Aurelio pays John a visit at his request to fix his battered Ford Mustang. After assessing the damage, Aurelio warns that it'll take some time to restore the car to its former glory. As dusk falls, John gets an unexpected visit from Santino D'Antonio, a notorious figure in the criminal underworld. Santino reminds John of their shared history of how he aided him in completing an impossible task, which enabled him to retire and marry Helen. In return for that help, John had made a sacred promise known as a marker, symbolized by a medallion marked with his own blood. Now Santino has come to call in that debt. Despite all these compelling reasons, John says he's out of the game and retired. Santino doesn't take this rejection lightly. In response, he launches a devastating assault on John's home, wielding a grenade launcher and setting the house ablaze. Against all odds, John and his dog manage to survive the brutal attack to their house. John just stands there staring at all his lost memories as they burn away. Left without a home, John, accompanied by his loyal canine companion, seeks refuge at the Continental Hotel in New York City. In his desperate situation, he looks to Winston for guidance. Winston, however, issues a stark reminder. To refuse the marker would mean breaking 2 sacred rules of their underworld: no killing on Continental grounds and the obligation to honor every marker. The D'Antonio family is infamous for their ruthless ways, mainly because Santino's father holds as a part of the High Table, a council composed of 12 powerful crime lords who control all the Continental hotels worldwide. Faced with this harsh reality, John has no option but to reluctantly fulfill his commitment. He goes to meet with Santino, who cuts to the chase immediately. He tasks John with killing his sister, Gianna. You see, Santino craves his upcoming seat at the High Table, a seat their father deems her more deserving of. John, bound by his commitment, accepts the mission. John heads to his storage unit to gather some essential belongings before jetting off to Rome. He checks into the Roman branch of the Continental Hotel, where Julius, the manager, welcomes him warmly. When Julius jokingly asks if he's in town to target the Pope, John reassures him that's not the case and is granted access to the hotel's facilities. Next, John drops by a unique tailor shop that serves solely to assassins, crafting bulletproof garments to aid their dangerous work in the criminal underworld. After that, it's time to get his weapons. The shopkeeper, already familiar with the legend of John Wick, knows precisely what type of weaponry John would need to successfully complete his mission. However, before John can proceed, he needs to find out where Gianna is, so he visits a contact who provides him with a blueprint of her location, which would help him navigate the various entrances and exits. As night falls, John, now fully geared up, prepares for the battle that lies ahead. He infiltrates the celebration for Gianna's ascension to her seat at the High Table and confronts her in a dressing room. Faced with the inevitability of her demise, Gianna chooses to meet her end on her own terms. As Gianna takes her last breath, John ensures his mission's success by shooting her in the head, thus fulfilling the marker. With his mission accomplished, John attempts to make his exit. However, Cassian, Gianna's bodyguard, spots him and recognizes him instantly. Cassian quickly deduces that John must have been sent to eliminate Gianna. In the blink of an eye, a full-blown shootout erupts. John immediately springs into action, dashing through a lively concert while exchanging fire with his attackers. As he breaks away from the concert chaos, he finds himself up against more adversaries. Undeterred, he takes down approximately 6 men before swiftly changing his course to navigate through the city's subterranean catacombs. In the twisting tunnels, he comes across Ares, Santino's loyal bodyguard. But a surprising turn of events awaits him. A double crossing, an ambush takes place, but John manages to shield himself using his armored outfit, knocking off a few assailants in the process. He cleverly uses the labyrinthine catacombs to his advantage, isolating his enemies to deal with them one-on-one or in smaller clusters. In the ensuing carnage, John's remarkable skills and deadly precision comes to play. Every target he zeroes in on meets a swift end. In a breathtaking display of ferocity and efficiency, he goes on a furious killing spree with a kill count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 10. 12 men within a time span of roughly 45 seconds. John narrowly escapes the catacombs, only to be struck by a car out on the street. Emerging from the vehicle is Cassian, who opens fire on John. The two then engage in a high-stakes hand-to-hand combat. The fight is a fierce display of might and skill as both men trade blows, each gaining and losing the upper hand. Their fierce combat comes to an abrupt halt as they crash into the lobby of the Continental Hotel. Adhering to the hotel's non-negotiable rule, no killing on the premises, John and Cassian cease their fight. In an unexpected twist, the two adversaries find themselves in the bar. John reveals the motive behind his assassination. But even after learning that Santino was the orchestrator, Cassian vows to kill John, promising him a swift end. When John returns to his room, he receives a call from Santino. Santino acknowledges that John might feel personally wronged and says he understands if John is upset. In a twist of irony, Santino places a bounty of $7 million on John Wick's head, disguising his move as an act of revenge for his sister as the sun rises on a new day. John gets ready to check out of the Continental Hotel in Rome, preparing for his return journey to New York City. The hefty contract instantly grabs the attention of high-profile assassins worldwide. Meanwhile, Santino meets with Winston, who asks for a blood oath to confirm that John has fulfilled his commitment and is no longer under any obligation to Santino. It's here that Santino dismissively tells him there's no need for that, assuming that John won't survive his return to New York. Winston, however, cautions Santino that he's made a grave mistake, warning him about the price of betraying someone like John Wick, a man not to be trifled with. Winston states that Santino has in essence stabbed the devil in the back, forcing John back into a life he had chosen to leave behind. Meanwhile, John returns to New York City, where he is greeted not with open arms, but with a hail of bullets from assassins eager to the $7 million prize. As he traverses the city, John, a renowned assassin himself, faces relentless attacks, turning his return home into a deadly game of survival. Killing John Wick, as these hopeful assassins soon discover, is no easy feat. His journey through the subway system continues with a confrontation by Cassian. They engage in a silent gunfight amidst the oblivious crowd, using silencers to avoid creating panic. The confrontation escalates into a brutal fistfight, ending with John stabbing Cassian in the aorta, leaving his fate hanging in the balance. This battle leaves John seriously injured and seeking help. Spotting a beggar, he offers a gold coin for assistance. With the beggar's help, he manages to extract himself from the dangerous situation. With his wounds still aching, John seeks the assistance of an underground crime boss known as the Bowery King. In this underworld hideaway, John's injuries are being tended to, providing some relief. But he is in need of more than just medical aid. He asks the Bowery King to leverage his extensive underground network to pinpoint Santino's location. He also requests weapons to assist him in his mission. The Bowery King, however, is curious. He questions why he should aid John. In response, John points out the dire consequences that would follow if Santino secured a seat at the high table. The Bowery King would lose his power, his resources would dwindle, and he would lose control over his underground networks. The thought of John Wick taking on a member of the high table excites his interest. After considering John's points, the Bowery King decides to help. He hands John a gun equipped with only 7 bullets, 1 for each million of the bounty, and directs him to an art museum where Santino is hosting a gala. Armed and determined, John infiltrates the gala at the museum. The dance floor parts like a sea as the crowd recognizes John and fearfully retreats. Drawing his pistol, John makes quick work of 7 of Santino's men, 1 bullet for each. However, he's quickly out of ammunition and is forced to procure a weapon from one of his downed adversaries. John relentlessly pursues Santino, mowing down any of his henchmen who dare to stand in his way. However, the chase takes him into a mirror maze, a disorienting room that seems to defy the laws of space and direction. John struggles to find his way through and close in on Santino. To make matters worse, Santino's security enforcer, Ares, arrives with a crew of guards, adding to the difficulty. But even this doesn't slow John down. He expertly begins dispatching Santino's security team one at a time. As he finally downs the last henchman, he clears a path for himself. Eventually, John comes face to face with Ares. They engage in a fierce close-range combat, pushing each other to the limit. The battle is brutal, but John ultimately emerges victorious, leaving Ares defeated and lifeless. However, during the chaos, Santino manages to slip away. Turns out he's hiding inside the Continental Hotel. John arrives at the Continental shortly after and asks Chiron for Santino's whereabouts. Chiron directs him to the hotel lounge. Upon reaching the lounge, Winston, the hotel owner, urgently warns John against taking any rash actions within the Continental's boundaries, as breaking the unbreakable rule of no killing would lead to severe consequences. However, John has had enough. His life had been torn apart due to Santino's manipulations. His house destroyed, forced back into a life of violence he thought he had left behind. Ignoring Winston's warnings, John in one swift move kills Santino right in the lounge room. Throwing the underworld into chaos, with the weight of Santino's death on his shoulders, John hastily departs from the Continental. He retreats to his old house, finding solace in the memory of his late wife. He relives the beautiful moments they shared in their home, a difference to the brutality of his current life. The following day, Chiron escorts John to meet Winston in a park. It's here that John learns the severity of his actions, violating the rules of the Continental by murdering Santino on its grounds. According to the High Table's decree, the bounty on John's life is now doubled and extended globally. As a consequence, Winston pronounces John excommunicado, revoking all his rights and access to the resources of the underworld. But Winston provides John a 1-hour head start before his excommunicado status becomes effective, a small gesture of professional courtesy. He also gives John a marker, a token of a debt that can be redeemed for future aid. Simultaneously, everyone stops in the park and stares at him. They go about their business, and John tells Winston he vows to kill whoever comes his way. Winston acknowledges this with saying, "Of course you will." As John departs the park with his dog, Winston enacts John's excommunicado. The 1-hour countdown begins. In the very park where their conversation took place, phones begin to ring, signifying the impending hunt. Determined and relentless, John begins to run as the film draws to a suspenseful close, leaving his fate up in the air.